In this video, we're continuing section 1.1 on propositional logic, and we are going to discuss order of operations, or sometimes we call this precedence. So this has to do with when we have a bunch of logical operators, like a not, an and, if and only if, which ones do we deal with first? Because sometimes the people who are typing this up, we call these typesetters, they get lazy. There's a typo there. This should say L-A-Z-Y. They get lazy and don't write parentheses all the time. So here are our order of operations rules for these logical operators. So first is the not symbol. After that comes and, or, and the exclusive or. If we have multiple ones of these, we'll need parentheses to distinguish which one we do first. And then finally, we have the if then and the if and only if. If we have multiple of those, then again, we need parentheses to distinguish which one we do first. So if I have something like this, well, I see the not, we do the not P first. After that, the and would come next. So I'm going to put a parentheses to help separate that meaning. This would be not P and Q. So we're going to do the and statement before we do the if and only if R part. So that parentheses makes this more clear. One thing also I want to mention about the thing inside of the parentheses in terms of my order of operations. This means we are doing the negation of P first and then doing and Q to whatever that is. And not, let me put this in a different color, not that we're doing P and Q first and then putting a negation in front of the whole thing. Okay, we're doing the not P first and then whatever that is, then we're anding it with the Q. Okay. So if I wanted to put a parentheses around this not, I could to clearly indicate it's this, but just from the context in my order of operations, when I see this, I need to just keep in mind that this means, okay, not P is happening first, and then after that, we're anding it with the Q. Okay, so as another example, what operator would we do first in this situation, P and Q or R? Well, there's no parentheses. All of my operations are in the second level here. So it's unclear which we do first. This one is ambiguous. This one is ambiguous. Unclear which one do we do first. So we would need parentheses to determine what to do first. Which to do first. Okay. So in all the problems I'll give you to work out, in a situation like this, I would always include the parentheses. But if you do have stuff like this given to you, then we can use these order of operations to determine which we do first. Okay, all right, so let's do an example. Let's translate the sentence to logic. So this says that you can be Draco's friend only if you are in Slytherin or you eat floating cupcakes. So the first thing that I would want to do here is, let's identify the sort of the building block propositions. So I see this initial statement about you can be Draco's friend before the connecting only if words. So I'll call this thing D, D for Draco. So D is going to be the proposition you can be Draco's friend. So this example is coming from the world of Harry Potter here. So you can be Draco's friend. Draco's one of the characters from that book. Okay, and then I see this only if. I see this connecting word. And we've seen before that when we have an only if, that is an implication arrow in this direction. Okay, so that is helpful. And then what comes after that is I see a couple of other building block propositions. There is you are in Slytherin. I'm going to call that S. And then I see another connecting word or. And then after that, I see you eat floating cupcakes. So maybe I'll call that C. So I'm going to indicate that S is the proposition you are in Slytherin. And then C is going to be the proposition you eat floating cupcakes. You eat floating, spell that better. You eat floating cupcakes. Okay. So for this example, when we convert this thing to logic, like I know or means we have to have this symbol. One of the things that we might be unsure of is, well, I see a D first, and then there's this only if, which I know is this arrow like this. And then after that, there's an S or C. But it might be unclear about like, well, is the parentheses around this? Or is it like D implies, and then is the parentheses around the S or C? Because that's something that we need to determine from the context of the sentence. And I think based on the context of the sentence, the main operator is this only if. So you can be Draco's friend only if, and then they're about to provide a condition. And all of this I kind of see as being in a parentheses. You can be Draco's friend only if you're in Slytherin or you eat floated cupcakes. That seems to be the context of the sentence based on this. Okay, so I think that is a strong indicator that this is the way to write it in logic. Okay, that this is the main operator here. Okay, so just as a quick review, in our logical symbols, when we see the statement P if and only if Q, remember that becomes P and then I put a double-sided arrow and then I put Q. If I have the statement P if Q like this, well, that's another way of saying P happens if Q happens. So I can reorder that as if Q happens, then P happens. Okay, so that would be, so if Q happens, then P happens. So I'm going to write that, like normally I would write that as Q and then I'd put an arrow to P like this. But just to stay consistent with the order, this might look a little weird here, but it's saying, if I just keep the order as they are, as P and then Q, it's saying if Q happens, then P happens. So I'm going to put a backwards arrow like that. And we'll see why I'm doing that in just a sec. And then if I have P only if Q, like we did in this example, we know that that's a forward arrow. We know only if represents a forward arrow. So this would be P and then a forward arrow to Q. So why I decided to put a backwards arrow like this is because I can think about breaking up this if and only if into each of these individual statements, an if statement and an only if statement. And if I remember that the only if is this way, then I know that the other direction would have to be this reverse facing arrow, or the other way around. If I remember that this one is this reverse facing arrow, which I can get using this logic here, because this is saying if Q happens, then P happens, well then P only if Q, it's got to be the other order.